Botswana's President Mokgweetsi Masisi has addressed the nation this evening ahead of his visit to South Africa tomorrow. His address comes after his predecessor was charged in absentia with 14 counts of illegal possession of firearms. Let's get an update of that address from two of our guests, journalist Victor Baatweng, and also joining us from Sao Paolo in Brazil is the President of the Organization of African Political Parties Forum, Dr. Charles Sinkala. Dr. Sinkala, very good evening. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Victor, delighted that you could join us. Victor, I'm going to start with you. President Masisi gave an address earlier this evening on the rationalization of government ministries. Are you at all surprised that he did not make mention of the firearms charges against Ian Khama?
Come again, you said, am I not what?
Are you surprised that he did not make mention of the charges leveled against former President Ian Khama?
No, it did not come as a surprise. Remember, because there are three arms of government, Masisi leads the executive part, and the charges are basically handled by the judiciary. So it would be seen as him interfering on the works of judiciary if he was to make any public comments on that. So I think it was better for him to just leave it as it is.
Even though the spat between the two is pretty evident.
Yeah, the fight has been going on for the last 4 years or so. Actually, former President Ian Khama, when you speak to him, he will tell you that this is a personal attack on himself and his family and his associate by President Masisi. But obviously, the presidency and the state, when you speak to them, they will tell you that the government is easily implementing the rule of law.
Dr. Sinkala, in your opinion, did Ian Khama's formation of the Botswana Patriotic Front fuel this fractious relationship, or was the formation a result of the disagreements that the two men had?
Yeah, thank you so much, Hugo, and good evening to your viewers. Thank you for having me, and greetings to my fellow panelists. Look, yes, of course, I think the relationship with the hand-picked Masisi, by Ian Khama, from his party, which was founded by his father, the first founding father of Botswana, sparked a very bad spat in terms of him, according to what he planned, that he shall work with the Masisi, and to his surprise, it was so bad that, he had to leave his father's political party to go and support an opposition political party. He did not form another political party because he served the term. And in fact, when he left office, he left the office at a very good, clean slate just before his term ended, So I think it was a poor judgment from his side, as a former president. He shouldn't be partisan, to start supporting, especially an opposition political party. He was supposed to be a political and remain an advisor with whatever nonsense or whatever he can classify as unjustifiable for somebody handpicked whom he thought is supposed to be subservient to him. And of course, Ian Khama comes from the king's kingdom, is a chief or the king, whatever they call him, from the traditional rulers. So I think that superiority as well in him has actually tainted him, and that's why these trumped up charges, which are uncalled for. I don't think that it's an attack on his family, but it's a political game.
Victor, you seem a little bit bemused by the comments that Dr. Sinkala is making, but you're firmly on the ground. Now, talk to us about, I suppose what's surprising, certainly for me and many of our viewers, would be that President Masisi was handpicked. So there would be an assumption that these two would have been working in tandem at that point. Now, when the fractious nature of their relationship become public or emerge, and what are some of the causes, do you think?
Well, yes, it's true that former President Ian Khama handpicked Masisi. Remember, we work under an automatic succession where whoever is vice president at a time when a term of an incumbent president comes to an end, takes over as a gap president. That has happened during the Mogai era when Ian Khama himself was a vice president, and he automatically took over from the former president, Festus Mogai. So that's what had happened with Masisi. And like the doctor has said, the expectation was that the two men would easily work together. But as soon as Masisi was in office, he started with the most biggest thing that he did was to fire the former Director General of the Intelligence Army, or the Intelligence Unit, who is a very close friend of Ian Khama from the army. They worked together at the army. When Ian Khama established the intelligence agency, he picked him to be the Director General. So when Masisi came in, he fired Isaac Khosi, who is close to Ian Khama, and I think that's where a lot of changes came in. The fight started basically there. The next thing was then, in terms of the Retired President Privilege Act and the like, Ian Khama wanted access to some form of transportation, particularly to use the aircraft as a former president. And part of the act is that he has to ask for permission from Masisi. And there were, on a number of occasions, you would recall the story of when Ian Khama wanted to visit the Dalai Lama, and President Masisi refused to pay for the trip because of the policy that Botswana has with, or the diplomatic relation that Botswana has with China. So those are some of the key things that led to the fight between the two men, which now have gone into its fourth year.
Victor, I'm going to stay with you. There are a number of charges that Ian Khama has been charged with. Now, if found guilty, right, what is the likely sentencing? But before you even respond to that, I'd like for us to watch an excerpt from an interview I had with the former president a couple of weeks ago, and then we'll come back to that.
You would recall that there was this fabricated story that I had stolen 100 billion pula, $10 billion US, from our national bank. Monies that the government didn't even have. And their story was that in June of 2008, which would be 3 months after I took office, I suddenly started engaging in that activity. Now, that was a fabricated story. Everybody knows it's a fabricated story. It's been kicked out of the High Court because they charged some other young lady who they were hoping, through intimidation, by locking her up. They went to her, the head of intelligence went to her and said, if you want to get out of the cells here, all you need to do is just implicate Khama, and we'll let you out. So that they could then arrest me, because that was his intention, to have me arrested and put in jail. And once in prison, then I'd be eliminated. That's a fact. So that failed. And after that failed, then they came up with this other story of weapons of war, another fabrication, which they're busy running around trying to do as we speak now. So I have weapons, my own personal weapons, which are all licensed. So surprise, surprise, they found out that...
Well, I suppose the question to us right now is, how big is your weapon, your artillery? Is it?
Oh, I'm not going to... Oh, artillery now. I mean, if you want to know what artillery does, you only have to switch on the TV set and see what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. That's artillery. I don't have anything like that. I'm talking about, you know, they wanted shotguns, hunting rifles, that type of thing, you know, some handguns. So this is what has been going on, and an assault rifle. So these are the things which have been going on. So they couldn't get at me because those things were all legal.
That was my conversation with former President Ian Khama a few weeks ago. So Victor, he seems to brush or laugh off the issue around allegations of him with all these weapons. In fact, he says he's got a handful of guns. Your take on that? Is any of this founded, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's only fair, or it's only good that the case has finally reached the courts, and we expect that the court should be able to determine whether indeed Ian Khama acquired those guns lawfully or not. Remember, part of the people that he's been charged with is the police commissioner, who's now on suspension, who's being accused of aiding Ian Khama to acquire some of these guns. So he's part of the people who appeared in court this morning on the matter. So the expectation is that they are going to go back to court on the 6th of June, and that's when the case would continue. Unfortunately, Ian Khama did not make it this morning, as you know that he's on exile in South Africa. And it's one of those key questions of that we need to ask him why he chose not to show up. But obviously,
if you'd allow me to come in there and then immediately go to Dr. Sinkala, he clearly said that he suspects that if he's taken in, if he is incarcerated, then the current government will try and get rid of him. So I think it's pretty clear why he didn't pitch based on the interview I had with him. But Dr. Sinkala, coming to you, President Masisi is visiting South Africa tomorrow. It's going to be in conversation with President Cyril Ramaphosa, with his adversary a few kilometers away, so to speak. Do you think that this will be part of the conversation that they will have, and what will that conversation sound like?
Yeah, look, they can touch on that conversation, and I'm sure the way President Ramaphosa has been very vocal on the continent in terms of governance and the end to conflicts, within Africa and outside Africa. I'm sure he will pose a question on a glass of water or wine or whatever the occasion might be. But look, President Masisi will stand his grounds and say, look, the other arm of the government is investigating that allegations. He can't prevent it. But in governance, as president, he's head of executive, yes, like what my fellow panelists mentioned. But, you are the CEO of the country. Whatever which goes to the court, you have the reports which are briefed to you all the time. And such cases like this, they shouldn't be be aired, and I think they should manage that conflicts. And I think we know exactly what has been happening and the external influence, which when Ian Khama was head of state in that country, he protected a lot of institutions and a lot of, if you talk about the animal conservations, he banned from the trophy hunters and the elephant exports and many other issues. But when President Masisi came quickly, he started working against those. So that's why I think Ian Khama could not sit from his retirement chair, and he continued to start saying, hey, we were building onto this. Now you're destroying what we are building. This is not what we agreed. But then I'm sure they must have that conversation that, by the way, I'm the head of state, so who are you? I know you can advise me, but I'm leading here. I think that's where the conflicts started between the two. And he has appeared many times to clarify his stance. And you can see from his tone, they are very quiet and calm. He's one of the leaders that we saw during his term who spoke against Robert Mugabe. He also wrote a letter to SADC Secretariat that I won't attend any Secretariat meetings or convention if Robert Gabriel Mugabe will be present, because he saw exactly what was happening in Zimbabwe. But look, we Africans, we are abusing ourselves in terms of governance. This shouldn't be the case of especially former heads of state. And in terms of the law, yes, it's an abuse of law. They won't find the facts of any allegations or evidence. The court will just be wasted their time. And the former police officer, very senior person who was sworn in under oath, including him, Ian Khama as head of state, on a misdemeanor type of a case.
Dr. Sinkala, looks like we've run out of time. I'm going to have to thank you for your time, Dr. Charles Sinkala, Organization of African Political Parties, speaking to us from Sao Paolo in Brazil, and Victor Baatweng, journalist, coming to us from Botswana. Thank you both, gentlemen, for your time. Now, coming